Okay, iced coffee. So let me start by saying that I am definitely not a coffee connoisseur, by no means. In fact, it's been probably a little more than a year and a half since I've actually had any coffee. I was drinking iced coffee before I quit. I stopped for weird reasons, but I kind of got a taste for it, so I decided I was going to go ahead and get back into making some iced coffee. But this time I was going to do it different. Before I was actually brewing coffee with my coffee maker, and then I would make a flavored iced coffee out of it, and it was fine. It was good, tasty. But this time I'm trying something different. I'm actually doing a cold brew. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One, because the van. I can do cold brew probably a lot easier than I would be able to do hot coffee, because I don't necessarily think I'm going to bring my coffee pot. So with that said, cold brew is really the better way to go here in this particular situation. Now, what I am using is just run-of-the-mill coffee here. We got some Folgers Classic Roast, typical standard old brew type grounds. And in fact, this coffee is, I opened this about a year and a half ago, more than a year and a half ago, before I stopped drinking coffee. So this isn't exactly the freshest either, but I'm going to make it anyways, because that's just, why not, right? Why not? So what I did was I started with about 6 scoops. Now, I'm guessing, and maybe this is wrote on here, but I don't even know. I'm guessing that this is probably an eighth of a cup. So say a quarter cup for 2 scoops. So I put about 6 scoops or 3/4 of a cup in a mason jar. Now, this is a concentrate intended to split into 2 quarts. Of coffee. Now, depends on how strong you like your coffee, and of course, and then how sweet you want your, iced coffee, if that's the way you choose it. It's depending upon where your base is going to start at. Now, I'm going to do 3/4 of a cup of grounds for 2 quarts of water, roughly, and I'm going to add in some sweetened condensed milk. Now, I've got 2 versions of this. This is a standard, bought off the shelf, sweetened condensed milk, and then I have a caramelized version. Now, this is a caramelized version that I created. You can make caramelized sweet condensed milk a couple of ways. You can put it in a saucepan and you can stir it on real low for 30-40 minutes until it comes to the browns and thickens up to the consistency that you're looking for. It's a super hands-on and laborious method of doing it, so I kind of looked at it a different way, and I decided I was going to sous vide this. So you can sous vide this a couple of different ways. It does take considerably more time, but it's something that you can do like a crock pot, pretty much set it, forget it. So that's what I like about it. Now, you can open a can and you can pour this into a mason jar, and you can drop the mason jar in your sous vide, and you can put it on 185 degrees Fahrenheit for about 8 or 10 hours, depending on the consistency that you're looking for. You might have to try it a couple times until you figure out what time frame it is that works best for you for the consistency that you're going for. But what I like to do is actually sous vide this right in the can. Now, if you're going to sous vide in the can, I do recommend that you either use a heavy-duty Ziploc bag or vacuum seal it. If you put the bare can in the sous vide, you're going to have to contend with the label falling apart. Now, you could take the label off, but there's still the glue residue that's on the can that kind of gets mixed in with the hot water. and it, you know, kind of sticks to your sous vide maker. And, you know, that's kind of yucky. You don't want to have to go cleaning all that up. And then furthermore, one other thing that happens is that the can itself sort of rusts. And it looks kind of yucky, and, you know, it's not something that you want to, I don't know. I didn't really feel very good opening this up with a rusty can. So I vacuum sealed these, and I did 3 or 4 at a time. And so that's what this is. So this is a caramelized version. So what I need to do first is sift out all the grounds, and then we're going to open up these 2 sweetened condensed milk cans, and we're going to use the blender, and we're going to blend the contents, you know, one at a time. So I'm going to make 2 different separate batches here because I want to see what the taste difference is between the regular and the caramelized version, and also, you know, the visual effect, and see how, you know, light or dark it's going to be. I'm assuming it's going to be, the caramelized is going to be quite a bit darker, because it is quite a bit darker after you've caramelized it. So what I got here is basically, I'm going to hope this works. I've got a strainer. Where did I put that? Here it is. And I've got a coffee filter. Now, what I've got on order is a little strainer, stainless steel strainer that fits into these quart jars. So hopefully that will that'll fix that. That'll help make that a little bit easier. I don't know if it's going to work as easy or as nice, or if it's going to make a bigger mess. Honestly, I just don't know. So we're gonna try this a little bit at a time until we figure out what's the best method. Now, I don't want to go too crazy here, so it spills up over the lower funnel. But we'll see how this works out. The van's leaning a little bit, tilted down in my driveway here, so this is going to take a couple minutes. All right, so you can clearly see there's a significant difference between regular condensed milk and sous vide or caramelized condensed milk. So, and you know, quite a bit thicker, and like again, it depends on how long you saute or you sous vide it. It depends on how thick and you know, gooey it becomes. This is quite thin, and that, of course, is damn near a solid, if you will. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and top this up with filtered water. I've got 2 quarts already of plain water already prepared. So, like I said, I want to make this about 2 quarts. It's going to be a little bit more by the time we add in the sweetened condensed milk, but that'll be our taste test, I guess. There we go. All right, so while that's steeping, coming through, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do this regular condensed milk first. Now, depending on, like I said, how sweet you might like it, you might consider doing 3 quarts per can or 4 quarts per can. Again, your mileage may vary. If you're going to adjust how sweet it is, you might also want to adjust you know, your coffee level, how much grounds you use, depending on how strong you like your coffee as well. So there's definitely a lot of variables. This is just a recipe that I sort of just kind of went with, if you would, based on what I was doing previously with the iced coffee from brewing it. So that's the regular, and we're gonna go like half coffee, half water, and we'll dump it in this pitcher and mix it up a little bit more. I'll deal with those grounds up in the house. Beautiful. Rest of the coffee, rest of the water, and oh, it smells good. Smells super good. So this reminds me of like the Starbucks iced coffee you can buy in the jars, in the glass jars at the gas stations and stuff. That's what really got me thinking about it, because I really like those. They got some great flavor. Let's see here. We got a couple of glasses. If I can get these apart. There we go. Whew. Oh. Very tasty. Very tasty. Suppose I could have got a little bit more in those jars. All right, so those are the caramel, or those are the regular condensed milk versions, considerably lighter. I can throw some ice in there here in a minute. So I'm going to use a butter knife here to persuade it to come out. Go. Takes care of that. Now a little bit of coffee. A little bit of that water. Now, from previous experience, there's a little bit of solid from that caramelized that didn't break up in the blender the first time I did this. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour that through like that, just in case. Yep, there's a little bit of sugar crystals in there for sure. Should actually put those down in the trash and in there. That's okay. All right, well, the rest of the coffee, the rest of the water. And of course, give it a nice mix. Go. All right, we'll let that foam out, and then we'll grab ourselves some ice. Because you can't, of course, have iced coffee without it being, have ice in it. Please don't make a big mess in the process. So yeah, I don't know if I talked about the actual steeping process. I did this for about 12 hours. Again, mileage will vary depending on, depending on how coarse ground coffee it is you're using. Maybe this wouldn't need to take 12 hours to steep, maybe 10, maybe 8. But, I think the main thing is to try to minimize how bitter the coffee is, because that's like a tendency that some people don't care for, is like how bitter it is. So you definitely got to take that into consideration. But I mean, honestly, I don't see that much of a difference between the two. I mean, one is a little bit darker, but not by much in terms of that. But let's see, how about the taste, because, the more caramelized, you might have a deeper, smokier flavor. They're close. Different, but close. Obviously, they're made from the same thing, but again, I'm not a coffee snob either. So someone else might be able to taste the difference. This one seems a little bit, smoother. The darker one has a little bit more of a bite, if you will. They're both freaking tasty, though. But that's it. That's iced coffee in a nutshell. I mean, not too difficult to make a nice refreshing drink if you're not in a hot coffee. And again, if you're not in a sweet coffee either, I mean, I don't know. It depends on your personal tastes. Again, some might find this too sweet, and others might not find it sweet enough. But at the end of the day, it's what's cool about this is that you can kind of play around with the recipe to come up with something that you find is adequate for your tastes. This works out pretty good for me. It gives me, that's probably a week's worth of coffee if I don't indulge too often. I was drinking coffee all day long for a while there, and I realized I needed to get some more, just water into my system. So that's one of the reasons why I backed off the coffee train. But if I can limit myself to one or two of these, but the thing is, these are so good. I mean, you could darn near slam it. It's got some kind of a quenching thing to it when you drink it. So very tasty. So yeah, these can go down pretty quick. Very good, very good, very good. All right, well, I'm going to leave it here with you guys. I do hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. A couple of snafus on my projects. Definitely getting more comfortable in the van in terms of utilizing its space and just trying to figure out how things work or how things are going to work. Adapting from a 2,500 square foot home to a 100 square foot home. So, one step at a time, that sort of thing. But soon, hopefully if I can keep my motivation going and get things done around the house part and get things, sold, and then I can get on my merry way if I can do that. If I can do that. But definitely thanks a lot for tuning in this week. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Definitely helps me out. In the long run, it'll help me out. So definitely recommend it to your friends if you haven't done that either. That's kind of cool. Appreciate that support. I do post this up on Twitters and Instagram. So as well as post food pictures and stuff like that. So I'm going to do a little bit more of food preparation as well on here. I'm not going to go in grand detail. Maybe this was more detail than most people would have liked. But I do want to include that because I have a passion in creating food. I'm no professional by no means, but I do like to mess around in the kitchen. So I'll definitely be sharing some of that as well as some of my adventures on here. So again, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.